Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle podcast. I'm Bobby Owsinski, and this is a show all about music, music production, and the music business. And this show is going to be a little bit different from the standpoint that we're not going to have a guest on. I'm not going to talk anything about social media or the music business. This is the AES show report. And the AES show was just held over the weekend in Los Angeles, and it was pretty interesting in that it usually gives you an idea about the trends that are happening in the business. And there were a lot of trends this year. There were a lot of new products, and it was very, very interesting. First of all, it was good that it was in LA. Finally, after 12 years, it's back. Generally speaking, the AES convention, and this is the 137th, by the way, so this has been going on for quite some time. Usually it alternates between two cities, San Francisco and New York. And they're great cities. San Francisco especially is a wonderful place to visit, but is also one of the most expensive places on the planet. And there's not as much of an audio scene there as there is in LA. And same with New York, which was once upon a time the center of the music business and no longer is. LA really is. So it was good that everything was finally back here. And as a result, there was a very, very robust crowd. And all the manufacturers were really happy. And I heard a lot of them say, wow, finally we're at a place where there's people. Not that there isn't a lot of people in New York and San Francisco, but it's just not the same. So the level of enthusiasm tended to be much higher than most AES shows, and that was a good thing. A couple of observations. First of all, there were a lot fewer software companies than you'd find at NAMM, for instance. And sure, there were some of the big ones. Waves was there, Slate Digital, Isotope. But by and large, a lot of the small software and accessory companies that you see at NAMM just weren't there. And you find that the audio hall at NAMM is much larger than the AES show was, which is surprising. That said, it was still pretty good, and everybody kind of liked it. Many of the large companies, by the way, like UAD, Universal Audio, which they have a huge presence at NAMM, they just had a small 10 by 10 booth that was kind of tucked in with Avid. So that happened a lot as well. There were no huge booths like you'd usually find at NAMM, for instance. They were all modest, and you might see some 20 by 20s, for instance, but they weren't really huge by standards of that we're used to at NAMM. That being said, it was a good show. So let's get down to speaking about a lot of the new items that were there. And I've broken this into categories of speakers and microphones and consoles and software and outboard gear and miscellaneous. So let's start with loudspeakers. First thing I want to get to is Les Paul speakers. That's right, Gibson came out with Les Paul branded speakers. And what's significant about these is they look like a Les Paul. I mean, really. They have a carved maple top, a flame top, and, it looks like basically a guitar with no strings with holes for speakers. And they sounded okay. It's hard to tell on a noisy convention hall floor, but, they sounded okay. They weren't terribly, I guess they were okay priced. They're reasonably priced. You can't say they're cheap. They're for the 8-inch version. They're two-way speakers, so basically a tweeter, a 1-inch dome tweeter, 1-inch dome tweeter, and an 8-inch woofer are $9.99 a piece. For the 6-inch, it was $7.99. For the 4-inch, which were really small, it was $5.99. And of course, they had all sorts of inputs, XLRs, RCAs, whatever. That being said, they didn't have a lot of information. The only information I could get out of them is they weren't KRK speakers, and KRK is now owned by Gibson. So I kind of figured it was just a KRK version of something that was rebranded as Les Paul, and they said no, it came from the ground up. That being said, I guess you have to wonder why. First of all, they look cool. There's no question about it, but people don't buy speakers because they look cool. People buy them because they sound good. or they sound good and they fit in their price category. And Les Paul speakers, I'm not so sure they fit in either one. So my big question is, why did they bother? But time will tell, and we'll see how successful they are. The next new speaker that I saw was actually a whole series by JBL. They call them the Series 7. And I got to say, I've never heard such low end from such small speakers. They had a 5-inch and an 8-inch speaker, and the thing sounded huge. But that's not the story. The real story is these were made for surround sound. They were made for 5.1 and up, even up to Atmos level. And Atmos, as you know, is the latest Dolby speaker array, where basically you have speakers on top of you, you have speakers on the sides, you have speakers in your chairs. It's a 64-channel system. And this JBL system was made with that in mind. And they come with anchor points on the speakers. But one of the cool things is the whole front of them is a waveguide, the front baffle. And as a result, one of the things they have is some really great dispersion characteristics. So no matter where you're at in the room, when you walk off axis, they sound the same. And they really do. I walked around the room. I was amazed. Now, the way they come is a 5.1 system comes with a processor. It's basically a BSS processor, and it comes with an 8-channel amplifier rack. And the whole thing for a 5.1 system is about $10,000. But it's so new, the system is so new that it's kind of fluid. They don't know whether they're going to release them in stereo pairs yet, with or without the amplifiers, with the processors, however. But right now, it's just one system, a 5.1 system. Fairly expensive. Most people I know probably wouldn't buy it unless they were going to expand that system, or they were in a theater. They're putting together a theater, a dubbing theater. But they're worth listening to because, boy, big sound for small speakers, and I mean really big. And speaking of big sound, Genelec also came out with something new and very innovative. It was their 8351 model. Completely new design. And what's interesting again is they basically have a dual concentric tweeter and mid. And the mid is interesting because it's a very rigid dome system, a rigid speaker cone system, as opposed to one that normally has a lot of give to it, like most speakers. This is very rigid. That's for the mid. And again, they're really big into waveguides. So in this case, the waveguide is the whole front panel of the speaker, the front baffle. And they decided that in order for them to use this waveguide to its utmost and get the best frequency response, they couldn't have a hole there for a woofer. So what they did is they went back and they redesigned their woofers. And basically what you have are two ellipsoidal woofers that are only about 4 inches long. They're long. If you think of a rectangle, they're like that at the top and the bottom. And there's a slot for the output. And there's also a port in the back. But these things were great. I got to tell you, they sounded really good, and they went down to about 32 hertz, which is amazing for a relatively small box. Think about a box that usually you'd have an 8-inch woofer in. That's how big it was, or how small it was, I should say. 150-watt woofer amp and 90-watt mid-end tweeter amp. Another interesting thing that came of it, speaking with Will Eggleston, who's been the head of Genelec USA forever, he was telling us that they actually went with the new Class D amplifier. And there was a big reason for it, and that was Fukushima. Remember the Fukushima earthquake and tidal wave a few years ago that wiped out the power plant there? That actually had a big, big influence on the audio industry, and one that, unless you're a manufacturer, you don't know about. Because what happened was, all of a sudden, Sanyo and Samsung couldn't deliver chips that everybody relied on. So they had to go get other things that were more available, other chips that were more available, which meant that amplifier design in powered monitors had to change. And this is for everybody across the board. That's why you're going to see a lot of brand new speakers coming out, and it's mostly because, or upgraded speakers, mostly because they have to change the amplifiers to get more parts available, or more of the commonly used parts that are more available than what they used to have. You can't just pop in a new chip, for instance, a new IC. Sometimes what it means is, of course, redoing the circuit board and then changing things like heat sinks and getting them reapproved. And it's a big series of steps that has to happen. So it's not a trivial thing that happens. Okay, let's talk about mics. There were a lot of mics this time. And the first bunch that I came across was the new AKGs, and they have a lot of new mics in their Perception series, which is kind of a lower end. They have a small diaphragm P170, call it, and it looks like a 451, and it's $80. They have a high-end large diaphragm tube mic for $700. I couldn't hear any of these, by the way, but they look cool. There's a P420, which is $200, and a P220, also large diaphragm, for $150. Don't know what these are like. They look good. They have kind of a new look to them. They look a lot more expensive than they are, but that's the AKG Perception series. One of my favorite microphone companies is Advanced Audio, and I own some of their microphones, and I love them. I got to say, I own a couple of their U87 clones, and they sound as good as the best 87s I've ever used, and better than any of the new ones that you can buy. That being said, they came out with the new microphone, the CM1084, which has all the characteristics of an old Neumann KM84, another one of my favorite microphones. Great price, $399. Check them out. It's advancedaudio.ca, because they're in Canada. advancedaudio.ca. Oh, they also showed for the first time their CM251, which is their version of a 251, which also sounds great. $995. Boy, it's a big bang for the buck, so check those out. Another company I came across is Cathedral Pipes. Cathedral Pipes microphones. They look like the typical U87 body, but what's really interesting is there's an LED behind the grill. So they're bright, and you just can't miss them. It just kind of pulls you in, because where do you see a microphone that has an LED inside of it near the diaphragm? So I asked the designer, the owner of the company, Charles Dickinson, what's up? And he was saying that he's an artist himself, and he started to build his own microphones, and he was building one, and somebody said, can you make it brighter? And they kept on saying, make it brighter, brighter, brighter. And as a joke, he put this LED in. And then people started to order the mic specifically for the LED and say, well, I want mine in green. No, I want mine in orange. So it became part of the line. Anyway, it's worth checking out. They're very cool. They have a U47 type that's about $1,500. They're all handmade. And he's very meticulous about everything. He's very meticulous about the tubes and everything down to the way the body is put together, and just anything that has to do with the hardware. The diaphragms even they do. And it's all done in the United States in Southern California. So they're definitely worth checking out. They also build a ribbon mic that's sort of like an RCA 400 series. That's about $900. So check them out, Cathedral Pipes microphones. Another interesting microphone that I saw was the Josephson Engineering C700. This has been around for a while. It never caught my eye until now, but it's really interesting because it has basically three elements inside. It's two figure eight, so it's a Bloomline configuration, but in between them, in the middle of them, they have an Omni capsule. And the interesting thing about that is, with those three capsules, you'll be able to, after the fact, get any kind of directionality out of that microphone you want. You don't have to set it before you begin to record. This is afterwards, because it has MS properties, mid-side properties, so you're able to manipulate everything after the fact. Very, very cool. Expensive microphone. I think he said it's about $8,000, but it is very cool. Another one that's kind of along that line is a brand new one called the Gefell. It's Microtech Gefell. the KEM 975, and it's a line array mic. You know, when you go to a concert and you see the sound system, and all new sound systems are line array, so they're different boxes that are very directional and you stack them up as you need. Well, that's the idea behind this mic. It has 8 diaphragm elements in it. And the whole idea is that it gives you really, really exclusive, narrow directivity in a vertical plane. In other words, anything above the mic or below the mic isn't picked up. Whatever the mic is looking at, that's what it's picking up. And it's a fairly wide dispersion. So from side to side, it's picking up a lot, but not above or below. And because of that, this has been picked up by German television, for instance, and German parliament, and a lot of places where directionality is really important. They also had a neat thing that they had attached to it. So figure it's a very, very long tube with 8 elements. But behind it, there's also an attachment for a 9th element. And this provides low-frequency extension. And one of the things that line array will give you is, again, really, really tight dispersion, but it doesn't really do that below a certain frequency. And I think he said it was 120 cycles. By adding this 9th mic, it gives you the low frequencies. And the way it's positioned is very interesting. Think about if you were to have a bow and arrow and you pull the bow back, where your right hand is pulling it back, that's where they'd have the microphone, the 9th microphone. So it's a very interesting microphone. I don't think you'll see one like it anywhere else. It's expensive. It's about $11,000, but it's also a Tech Award nominee. I've never seen anything like it. Very cool. Check it out, the KEM 975. Also, sort of along that line, is the Audio-Technica 5045, brand new again. This is a side address microphone, and it's very, very thin pencil microphone. Think of a small diaphragm microphone, but instead of at the top of the microphone where the capsule would normally be, it's along the sides that you're actually talking into or that's actually capturing the sound. And ironically, it's a square element diaphragm that they're using. And just the way they have everything arrayed, it's actually the largest diaphragm that they have in any of their microphones. Although to look at this, you'd think there's no way that's possible. So there's a lot more surface area. And as a result, what it does is it takes very, very high SPL. So this was made for instrument recording and loud instrument recordings. It's not very expensive. It's about $1,600, and it's worth checking out, the AT5045. A new microphone that just came out that's very, very cool is actually an old microphone. Neumann reintroduced their U47 FET microphone. And for those of you who like the U47 FET, some people love them on vocals and some people love them on kick drums, for instance. You just couldn't get them for the longest time. I think in the 80s they went out of production sometime. Well, anyway, Neumann now claims that it's part for part the same as the way they used to be, and U47 FET is now available. It's at $4,000, which is fairly expensive. There are many clones that are cheaper than that, but they don't say Neumann on them. Another reissue, and this actually came out a few years ago, but it's something that only caught my eye now, is the Sony C38B. Now, the Sony C37 was a tube mic, and it was their answer to the Neumann U67. And this is a mic that everyone loves, or loved, because you can't get them anymore. It had a particularly unique design to it that gave it a particularly unique sound, but it was very much loved by everybody, and you just don't see them around, and you won't see them because whatever tube they're using, they can't get any longer. So Sony came out with the next version, the follow-up version, which is the FET, the transistor-based version, the C38B. So this is out, and once again, if you like that Sony sound, then this is the one to get, $2,200. And once again, it came out a couple years ago, but I only saw it for the first time, so it's something worth looking at. Another microphone that was interesting was the MXL Gigamic. And they call it a Gigamic because it's a huge microphone. Basically, think of a U47 that's twice as long. It's just a huge, ridiculously looking mic. Biggest body I've ever seen on a microphone. It's brand new. There was no information on it, and I don't know what the price is, but check it out, if nothing else, just to look at it, compare it against another mic U47 type clone. And finally, in microphones, Telefunken came out with their M60 FET. And basically what it is a small diaphragm microphone, but it's one of the first ones that Telefunken has come out with that doesn't need an outboard power supply for the tubes. So small diaphragm microphone, looks kind of like a KM84 or a 451, something like that. Don't know the price. They're brand new. They just showed them at the show for the first time. So that's microphones. There's a lot of microphones. Believe it or not, recording consoles are coming back. There was actually some fairly big consoles there. API, of course, showed some consoles. They're still selling, big consoles, but they didn't have anything new. But there were a number of new ones that came out. The Trident Series 88, for instance, finally is live and in the flesh. And this is really interesting. It's 24 channels of Trident. It's both an inline console and also it has its own monitor section. So what ends up happening is you get 72 inputs on Remix if you need that many. It's about $25,000, which is extremely reasonable. It looks really good. It looks sharp. Don't know how it sounds, but it's Trident. It should sound pretty good, even though Tridents aren't made the way they used to be. But nonetheless, it's Trident, and for $25,000, you probably can't go wrong. Jeff Daking has come out with his own console, and Daking, of course, makes some great microphone preamps that are all based around the Trident A range, and EQs that are based around the Trident A range. Well, he came out with his own console. Once again, Trident A range style mic preamps, very clever routing for things like parallel compression, and a really big master section that can take care of anything you can possibly think of. And it's made specifically to drop in a digital audio workstation screen in the middle of it. I don't know what it sounds like. Knowing Daking, Jeff only makes the best stuff. His stuff sounds great, so I'm sure this sounds great. It's about $65,000, I think, for 24 inputs. Again, reasonable for what it is, but very cool. So check that out when you get a chance. One of the best new consoles that I've seen, the best ideas, is the new SSL XL. Why? It's basically a 500 rack with a monitor section and a fader section and pan controls. So imagine a 500 rack that you can drop in whatever modules, and then it's basically your console. So what this has is aux-ins, it has faders, it has a master section, and it comes with 8 SSL preamps. There's 16 dual input mono channels. There's 4 stereo channels. There's the famous SSL mix bus compressor that comes with it. There's 18 slots that can be accessed either by the individual channels or by the mix bus. And there's 4 stereo mix buses. There's 4 auxes, 1 stereo, 2 mono. And there's even monitoring with bass management if you're doing 5.1. It has the famous SSL listen mic in it. If you want those Phil Collins drum tracks, that comes as part of it. And it has an internal power supply, which is kind of cool. So you don't have to worry about those big outboard power supplies anymore. Believe it or not, it was $20,000, and that's without anything in the slots. Just a bare console. Still, it sounds like a bargain for what you get. You can't often say that about SSL. Very cool. Of course, Neve was showing its Genesis console. That's about $55,000 for 24 inputs. Again, it looks very cool, and it comes complete with Neve modules and compressors. And maybe the biggest throwback was by Tree Audio. And Tree Audio, and you can look on my blog, my big picture blog, by the way. It's bobbyowsinski.blogspot.com, and you'll see pictures of all these things. There's a console version, and there's also just 8 channels with direct outs for about $16,000. If you really like a tube sound, this is the way to go. It's Tree Audio, and they call it The Roots is the name of the console, and The Roots Junior is just the 8 input section. So that's it for consoles. There's actually a lot going on. For outboard gear, not all that much. DBX came out with their 676 tube mic channel. So, it's again a tube mic input. It's a EQ and a compressor. relatively good price, $9.99. So check that out. It also looks good. It's black face DBX and it looks sharp. Pulse Techniques came out with all of the Pultecs. If you're a Pultec fan, you want the hardware, Pulse Techniques is now making the Pultec once again. And this is part for part identical, they claim. The original design specs, it's a Pultec, and it's every model. And it goes from about 2,500 to about 4,500. It's very, very cool. So check them out. Pulse Techniques. I think it's pulsetechniques.com. Another interesting 500 series company is called the Awesome Transistor Amplifier Company. Awesome Transistor Amplifier Company. And they just have a very unique look. It's unlike anything that you'll see. And they're 500 rack pieces. 500 series rack pieces. They have a preamp, they have an EQ, they have a compressor. But what's also unique is they also can turn all of that into a mixer. They have unique mixer modules, including a panner, an external fader box. And I do know that everything they make is all discrete, super high quality parts, and a really high quality design. So if you're looking for 500 series elements, check out the Awesome Transistor Amplifier Company. As far as software is concerned, there were three things that I saw. The first thing is Sound Radix, their new plugin called the Drum Leveler. Sound Radix, if you recall, has the very, very cool Surfer EQ. And the Surfer EQ is a dynamic EQ that basically will change frequencies on a mix element as the mix goes on, as it's needed. Very, very cool. That was a great idea. And they came out with something that they call the Drum Leveler. And really what it's for is, let's say you have a drum loop, stereo drum loop, and you think the snare drum isn't quite loud enough. You can actually go in, it will identify just the snare, and it will allow you to change its mix level. You can make it louder or softer, and it will do that on any mix level that you want. And the other thing it will do, it's a dynamic upward and downward compressor expander. So in fact, if you have a drummer that's very inconsistent, this could probably help out a lot better than just a normal compressor in keeping it more consistent. The cool thing, it's only $149. It's going to come out next month. It's worth checking out. The Sound Radix, RADIX Drum Leveler. Along those lines somewhat is by a company called Audionamics. Audionamics is known for audio source separation. What does that mean? Let's say you have a song, a finished song, and you're in a movie, and you're trying to put the song in the movie, and you think, wow, this vocal is really buried, we have to hear the words, but you can't go back and remix. And what this does, it allows you to go in and isolate just the vocal from the background track, and you can raise and lower it as needed, or eliminate it. So for instance, if you're a DJ or a remixer, and you just want to do something with the beat of the song and get rid of the vocalist, you can do that as well. And it does it really well. There's so many companies that have tried to do this in the past and haven't been able to, but in this case, they've been super successful. It's been really good. So what you should do is go to Audionamics. It's audio and then Namix, and they have two different things that they can sell you. The first thing is for $2.99, you can buy the program, but if you don't want to buy it, for $20 a month, you can subscribe. And that's kind of cool too. So this is cool, and it works again in a lot of different situations. But again, many companies have tried this in the past, but these guys are actually really successful at it. Finally, the last piece of software, and it's kind of hardware software. Universal Audio has finally come out with their satellite, the UA2 satellite, but the Thunderbolt version. And for all of those of you and me who have brand new computers that only have Thunderbolt, don't have FireWire 800, this is the answer, because now it's a real easy connection. Maybe one of the best things about this, though, is the fact that the processing power is doubled. Where before the satellite came in a duo or a quad version, now these come in a quad or an octo model, one or the other. So basically everything is, double the processing, which is cool. And that goes anywhere from $999 to about $6,000. This was behind a glass case, so we didn't actually get to hear it, try it. I don't know when it's available, but it's on its way. So that's kind of cool. So that's really it for software. Miscellaneous, there's a lot of very interesting things. There's a company called Somatic Audio, and they have some dedicated recorder playback machines, mostly for live. They have a live recorder called the LR16 and a 24-track one called the U-Track 24. So you don't need a digital audio workstation. You don't have to haul a workstation around to record multi-track. All you do is you bring this box, one U-box, and plug it in, and there you go. It's very, very easy. Cheap too. The 16-track version is $399, and the 24-track version is only $999. So that's a whole lot easier than even renting a Pro Tools rig or whatever. So check that out. That's Somatic Audio. Hearback, the company that makes individual monitor mixers, which I own one, by the way. I own a system. They came out with the Hearback Pro, and this is 16 dedicated channels, and each channel has its own volume knob. There's also an intercom that can talk from station to station if you want. You can control the aux and the pan, and there's even presets, which is kind of nice. It allows a mixer to put some presets in that a player can then dial up and use that as a basis to start from. But the other thing that can happen is there's also a lockout function, so the mixer can go in there and get a mix and lock it out. So no matter what, the player can't adjust anything rather than turn it up and down. One of the things I found is the more complicated the mix, sometimes the worse it is for a player who just can't seem to get it together. So sometimes having additional channels isn't an advantage. But in this case, if you need it, the Hearback Pro is available, and it's pretty cool. Radial, what a great company Radial is. They make the best boxes. They're super high quality. They always come out with something that's very useful, that's very needed in the field. Their direct box, their passive direct box is, with the Jensen transformer, is the standard. I mean, if you really want a great bass sound in the studio or live, you just get a Radial direct box. They came out with something that's very cool. It's called Headload. It's an amplifier attenuator. It's very unlike any other amplifier attenuator you've ever seen, though, because it has a resonance control on it, it has a load control, the direct box out has a voicing control, speaker cabinet voicing. There's a phase shift control, so you can go in there and you can actually dial in the amount of phase shift, so you can make sure there is none between the direct and the live sound. And it has a headphone amp. That's a lot to get in one box, and I don't think I've ever seen anything like that in an amplifier attenuator before. That's the Radial Headload. It's $899 is the retail on it. Nagra. Well, if you're in the film business, you know about Nagra. Nagra was the king of location sound for years and years. And they've lost their lead over the years, especially with digital audio, but they're trying to become relevant again. And now they have a series of handheld recorders. And there's one specifically for pros called the SD, and that has a built-in microphone. There's another one called the Lino and another one called a Pico, and these are both very, very small, and they go from anywhere from $975 on down. They're much more expensive than most of the other handheld recorders on the market. That being said, they're built like tanks, and they're built for heavy-duty use. So if you're going to be doing some really pro recording, these are the ones to get on the highest level. And finally, the very last thing is the Triad Orbit stands. I wrote about this on my blog several times, I think. So after maybe 100 years in the audio business, mic stands have not changed at all until Triad Orbit. And they make some of the best stands that you'll ever find anywhere. They are so well thought out. Everything about them is well thought out. They're articulating stands, which means that the bass can move into multiple positions, as will the arms as well. There's an air cushion that's variable, so if you want them to collapse easily or not at all, you can vary all that. They're made with super heavy-duty steel, so these things are heavy. They're not going to go anywhere. And they're made so they can actually go into tight places as well. And they have lots of extra little accessories. They have the way that they connect to the stand. No longer do you have to worry about screwing a stand adapter on. They have a new mechanism to take care of that that's relatively inexpensive. And the thing about it is, the company is an auto parts manufacturer. this is kind of a side business for them. So they've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. So it's not kind of a fly-by-night company that might be here today and go away tomorrow. These guys have been around for a long time. It's called Triad Orbit. You pay more for these stands, I got to tell you, but these are stands that will last a lifetime, definitely. So check those out, Triad Orbit. I think it's triad-orbit.com. And that's it. That's an awful lot of things for one convention. I think it's more than I've ever seen at any convention I've been to in terms of new gear that was relevant, that was cool, stuff that I would buy myself. If you want to learn more and see pictures of all this, go to my blog, my big picture production blog. It's bobbyowsinski.blogspot.com. Over this last week, I've been posting regularly, daily, about different parts that we just talked about here. So you can see and read more all about the things we just talked about. Thanks for listening and being in my inner circle. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, send them to questions@bobbyoinnercircle.com, questions@bobbyoinnercircle.com. On the next episode, we're going to get back to where we were, talking a little bit more about the music business, talking a little bit more about social media, and talking more with some guests that you're going to really love. To listen to other episodes of Bobby Owsinski's Inner Circle, go to bobbyowsinski.com and select the podcast tab, or you can go right to bobbyoinnercircle.com, or you can find it on iTunes or Stitcher. At bobbyowsinski.com, you'll find the sign-up form for my newsletter and for alerts for new podcasts. This is Bobby Owsinski, and I'll see you next time.